Why do we need to spend time validating information on the project? It seems like it's a waste of time many times, but it is actually a time saver. What we need to consider is that when we're producing content, and I'm speaking Revit speak here, when we're producing content like families, we need to make sure that when we're producing these families, they meet the relevant information that we need to issue in the next issue for that project stage. We also need to make sure that the family can be used to set up specific views in Revit. So for example, if we're producing a door at early stage, we know that this is the standard door for this that this client wants to use for these projects. But at early stage, before planning, we don't want to have a 1:5 detail in a planning application. We want to have a 1:100 with the planning application view of that door. So we need to be able to use that family to set up these specific views. And if the family is not produced carefully, it's not going to be suitable for that purpose of planning application. And it's not going to be suitable later on when we are moving on after planning application into detailed design. So we might have to reproduce the door, and this is going to cost extra time. So when we're producing the information, we need to know why we're producing this specific family, what the purpose of the family is, and how it's going to be used. And we need to make sure that we meet those requirements. You should follow specific validation formats when you're validating your families to make sure that you ask the same questions for every single family. And then you're building up a solid family library that you can use over and over again, and you know that it's the information in that family is solid. Then we need to validate our models. So before we're sending off the information for whatever purpose, we need to make sure that the model we're sending is suitable for that purpose. If it is for clash detection, we don't need drawing sheets in that model because we're not using sheets for the clash detection. We need to make sure that the model is modeled correctly. So when we are linking in structural and services engineering information, we know that the model is going to behave as a building. And then we can run clashes against each discipline, and we can pretty much trust the information that's coming out. But if the model is modeled poorly and we haven't checked that before we're sending something out, so for example, we might have a wall that doesn't reach all the way up to the ceiling, or it goes beyond the ceiling up and is clashing with the underside of the slab, then we're going to get clashed there, and it's just purely down to a modeling error. And if the modeler checked the model before going into issue, we will address these type of modeling errors before we're sending information out for clash detection and avoid a whole lot of additional clashes that shouldn't necessarily be there down to poor modeling. And we need to do that for every time we're sending information out for a purpose. We need to state what the purpose of the model is, and we need to make sure that it's been validated accordingly to meet those requirements. In addition, we need to make sure that the model meets the requirements for the responsibility matrix. So the responsibility matrix lists all the geometry components that need to be inside the building and all the data that is associated to each component, fire rating, dimensions, ironmongery, things like that. And if we are at stage 3 and we need to include specific doors with specific information, we might need to have vis panels, but we don't need kick plates. And we need to have dimensions and fire ratings, but we don't need installation date. Then we shouldn't have information about the installation date. We shouldn't have a kick plate on the 3D information when we're sending a model at stage 3. So we need to make sure that we're meeting the requirements that is set out in the responsibility matrix before we send the model out. At the end of stage, we need to make sure that we review the whole project. That is including the 3D models, the folder structure, the issue sheets, the title blocks, all the drawings to be sent out, making sure that all the information sits in the right folders, so we don't have PDF drawing files in the 3D model folder, for example. And we do that to make sure, firstly, to make sure that the model is, the project environment is nice and clean for the next project stage. We might have new people coming into the project, we might have people leaving. We need to make sure that people can find the information they need in the relevant folders, and everything is nice and tidy and clean, and we don't have any temporary models or test 1 models or test 1 option 2 models in there. Everything needs to be nice and clean and ready for the next stage. And also it makes the archiving of that project stage much cleaner. If we need to come back to that information in 2 years' time, it's much easier to find what we're looking for. It might seem like a time waste when you're sitting at 8:30, 9 o'clock in the evening trying to finish something off. But if we don't run these validations, we're going to end up spending more overtime when things go wrong, when the information is not suitable for the issue, when we're getting information rejected by the information manager because it doesn't meet specific requirements, and we have a deadline, then we need to redo the work, tidy everything up, fix all the modeling issues, and then reissue, validating, and then reissue the information. So best advice is to learn the validation questions you need to ask, learn what needs to be asked for when you're creating families, learn what needs to be asked when you are preparing a model for issue, and learn what needs to be asked when the whole project is reviewed at the end of stage. And it will be a huge time saver.